In the world of sports, there are many champions. There are countless fighters who have held titles, won belts, and earned fame. But once in a generation, someone rises far above the rest, not just because of skill or strength, but because of courage, character, and conviction. Muhammad Ali, born Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr., was more than just a boxer. He was a poet in the ring, a warrior outside of it, and a symbol of resistance, pride, and freedom. His fists delivered knockouts, but his words delivered truth. He was charming, defiant, and unapologetically proud. Loved by millions and feared by opponents, Ali was the kind of man who made history not once, but again and again, in the ring, in the courts, and in the hearts of people all over the world. As we begin this journey through his incredible life, we'll not only revisit the greatest fights and biggest moments, but also the deep values that made him a global icon. This is the story of a boy from Louisville who dared to dream big, spoke louder than fear, and became known simply as the greatest, Muhammad Ali. Born Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. entered the world on January 17, 1942. In Louisville, Kentucky. He was the son of Cassius Marcellus Clay Sr., a sign painter, and Odessa Grady Clay, a strong, spiritual woman who worked as a domestic helper. Growing up in the segregated American South, young Cassius experienced the painful realities of racial discrimination and economic hardship from a young age. His neighborhood was working class and predominantly black, and while his family was loving and supportive, they were not wealthy. His father drank heavily, and the tensions of racism and poverty were felt all around him. But from the beginning, Cassius showed a spirit that refused to be broken. He was full of energy, curiosity, and mischief. As a child, he wasn't the best student, but he was bright and expressive. He loved to talk, joke, and draw attention. His confidence stood out. At just 12 years old, an incident changed his life forever. His red Schwinn bicycle was stolen. Furious and heartbroken, he told a police officer named Joe Martin that he wanted to beat up whoever stole it. Joe Martin, who happened to be a boxing coach, responded, "Well, you better learn how to fight first." That single conversation sparked a journey that would change the world. Once young Cassius Clay stepped into the gym, something ignited inside him. Boxing gave him purpose, structure, and a channel for his overflowing energy. He began training at Columbia Gym under the guidance of Joe Martin, and later Chuck Bodak. While most boys his age were playing in the streets, Cassius was perfecting his jab, his footwork, and his defense. He trained relentlessly, often shadowboxing in front of mirrors, sparring late into the evening, and sprinting through the streets of Louisville in heavy boots. By the age of 14, he was already winning local amateur tournaments. He had a natural gift, fast hands, unmatched agility, and the kind of confidence that rattled his opponents before the bell even rang. His amateur career soared. By 18, he had recorded over 100 wins and only a handful of losses. In 1960, he was selected to represent the United States at the Summer Olympics in Rome. There, with dazzling speed and precision, he outboxed his way to the gold medal in the light heavyweight division. That victory didn't just make him an Olympic champion, it made him a national sensation. He returned home a hero, parading through the streets of Louisville, but also returned to a country that still saw him as a second-class citizen. He was a black man in segregated America, and that contradiction burned in his mind. That contrast between being celebrated abroad and disrespected at home would shape much of what came next. After winning Olympic gold, Cassius Clay transitioned into the professional boxing world with flair, confidence, and a mouth that never stopped talking. He quickly became known not only for his skill in the ring, but for his poetry and bravado outside of it. "I'm the prettiest," he would shout. "I'm gonna float like a butterfly and sting like a bee." Many dismissed him as a loudmouth, but he backed up every word. With his speed, intelligence, and showmanship, he started beating top contenders and climbing the ranks. He danced around his opponents with impossible footwork, slipped punches like water slipping off glass, and fired lightning-fast combinations that no heavyweight had seen before. In 1964, at just 22 years old, he faced Sonny Liston, the terrifying heavyweight champion. Most experts believed Clay didn't stand a chance. But Ali's confidence never wavered. In one of the biggest upsets in boxing history, Clay dominated Liston. After 6 rounds, Liston failed to answer the bell for the 7th, and Cassius Clay was declared the new heavyweight champion of the world. He stood in the ring, arms raised, and shouted, "I shook up the world. I'm the greatest." It was more than just a win. It was the arrival of a new kind of champion, one who spoke his truth boldly, proudly, and without apology. Just days after winning the world title, Cassius Clay made a decision that stunned America. He announced that he had joined the Nation of Islam and changed his name to Muhammad Ali. It was not just a religious change, it was a declaration of identity, pride, and purpose. "Cassius Clay is my slave name," he said. "I didn't choose it, and I don't want it." The name Muhammad Ali was given to him by Elijah Muhammad, leader of the Nation of Islam. And it symbolized a rebirth, a rejection of his past and a firm claim on his future. This move was highly controversial. Many refused to call him Muhammad Ali, including sports announcers and even other boxers. But Ali stood firm, never wavering in his beliefs. His conversion to Islam and his alignment with the nation's teachings gave him a new lens through which to view the world. He spoke openly about racial justice, about the dignity of black people, and about standing up to systemic oppression. He became more than just an athlete. He became a voice for the voiceless. His courage to be unapologetically himself, even when the entire world criticized him, was one of the most powerful acts of his life. He knew that fame meant nothing without principle, and for him, principle was everything. In 1967, at the height of his career, Muhammad Ali made a decision that would cost him everything: his title, his income, and even his freedom. Drafted into the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War, Ali shocked the nation when he publicly refused to serve. This wasn't just a personal choice. It was a bold act of resistance rooted in his deep Islamic faith and moral beliefs. "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong," he said. "No Viet Cong ever called me in." Those words echoed across a deeply divided America. While many saw the war as a patriotic duty, Ali saw it as a continuation of racial and political oppression. He believed that fighting abroad, while black Americans were still being beaten, jailed, and murdered at home, was hypocrisy. His stance wasn't cowardice, it was courage. He didn't flee to another country or seek a quiet exemption. Instead, he stood up face forward and said no, knowing full well what it would cost. The government stripped him of his heavyweight title. He was banned from boxing. He was convicted of draft evasion and sentenced to 5 years in prison, though he remained free during the appeal process. His reputation suffered in mainstream media, and he was labeled un-American by many. But to millions of people, especially in the black community and among anti-war activists, Muhammad Ali became a hero of conscience, a man who refused to compromise his beliefs for comfort. For 3.5 years, during what could have been the prime of his boxing career, he was denied the chance to fight. But in those silent years, his voice grew louder than ever. He toured college campuses, spoke against injustice, and transformed from a sports figure into a cultural and political icon. By the time the U.S. Supreme Court overturned his conviction in 1971, Muhammad Ali had become something greater than a boxer. He had become a symbol of courage and integrity in a time of moral chaos. When Muhammad Ali returned to the ring in 1970, the world watched with bated breath. Could he still fight? Had he lost his speed, his reflexes, his magic? After more than 3 years away from boxing, he faced Jerry Quarry in Atlanta, a fight that marked the beginning of one of the greatest comebacks in sports history. Ali's body had changed. He was older, slower, not quite the same dancing prodigy. But his mind had sharpened, his will had strengthened, and his technique was more strategic than ever. He won that match and then faced Oscar Bonavena. But the biggest test came in 1971, the fight of the century against Joe Frazier. 2 undefeated champions. 1 night. 1 ring. The world watched as Ali and Frazier went to war for 15 brutal rounds. Ali fought with brilliance, but Frazier was relentless, knocking him down in the final round and handing Ali his first professional loss. Though defeated, Ali gained even more respect for his courage and heart. He didn't hide or retreat. He kept training, kept speaking, and kept fighting. In the years that followed, he took on top contenders like Ken Norton, whom he lost to and then defeated in a rematch. His comeback was not easy. It was filled with pain, doubt, and sacrifice. But Ali refused to quit. His presence electrified every arena he entered. His interviews, always poetic and bold, reminded fans that he wasn't just fighting opponents. He was fighting to prove that principles and perseverance could outlast any setback. His return wasn't just about reclaiming a title. It was about reclaiming his legacy, proving that a man of conviction can rise even higher after he's fallen. Muhammad Ali's boxing career is filled with legendary matches, but 3 stand above the rest, not just for the physical display of skill, but for the emotional and psychological warfare that surrounded them. The first was the 1974 Rumble in the Jungle, perhaps the most famous fight in boxing history. In Zaire, Africa, under the hot night sky and in front of a roaring crowd of 60,000 people, Ali faced the undefeated and terrifying George Foreman. Almost everyone believed Foreman would destroy Ali. He was younger, stronger, and had knocked out opponents in just a few rounds. But Ali had a plan, the rope-a-dope. He leaned back on the ropes, absorbed Foreman's powerful punches, and let him tire himself out. Round after round, Ali whispered in Foreman's ear, taunting him, daring him. In the 8th round, with Foreman exhausted, Ali unleashed a lightning-fast combination that dropped the giant to the canvas. The world erupted. Ali had done the impossible. He had outthought, outlasted, and outboxed a man no one thought he could beat. Then came the 1975 Thrilla in Manila, the third and final match against Joe Frazier. It was not just a fight, it was a war. In the sweltering heat of the Philippines, they battled through 14 rounds of unimaginable punishment. Both men gave everything. Frazier's face was swollen shut, and Ali later said, "It was the closest thing to dying I've ever known." When Frazier's corner stopped the fight before the final round, Ali collapsed on his stool, utterly drained. These fights weren't just athletic contests. They were dramatic stories of strategy, endurance, and sheer willpower. They showed the world what kind of fighter Ali was, not just a master of movement, but a master of mind. He made boxing an art form, a chess match, a spectacle of strength and smarts. These legendary bouts immortalized him as not just a champion, but as the greatest. As the 1970s came to a close, Muhammad Ali was no longer the lightning-fast fighter of his youth, but he remained a global phenomenon. He defended his title several times, including in memorable fights against Ernie Shavers and Leon Spinks. In 1978, at the age of 36, he lost his heavyweight title to Spinks in a shocking upset. But in a rematch just months later, Ali regained the belt, becoming the first man in history to win the world heavyweight title 3 times. This was a monumental achievement, but it also marked the beginning of the end. Ali's speed had diminished, his reflexes were slower, and his body had absorbed years of brutal punishment. In 1980, he came out of retirement to face Larry Holmes, a former sparring partner turned champion. The fight was heartbreaking to watch. Ali, a shadow of his former self, was unable to compete with Holmes' precision and power. Many begged him not to fight again, but in 1981, he entered the ring one final time, losing to Trevor Berbick. That marked the official end of his boxing career. But retirement didn't mean silence. Even as his body grew weaker, Ali remained active on the global stage. He spoke about faith, justice, and peace. He visited schools, prisons, and refugee camps. He met presidents and world leaders, always wearing that same mischievous smile that had charmed the world. Though the gloves were off, the fight continued. This time, it was the fight for dignity, compassion, and truth. In 1984, Muhammad Ali was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a progressive neurological disorder that would slowly strip him of his speech, his mobility, and his physical strength. But it could not touch his spirit. Even as the tremors worsened and his voice faded to a whisper, Ali never stopped inspiring. He became a global ambassador for peace, traveling to countries torn by conflict and poverty. He lit the Olympic torch at the 1996 Atlanta Games, his trembling hand holding the flame, in a moment so powerful it moved the world to tears. He raised millions for charity through the Muhammad Ali Center, an institution focused on education, cultural understanding, and humanitarian outreach. Despite his illness, Ali remained present in the world, and his silence only amplified his presence. He stood for the forgotten, the oppressed, and the voiceless, not just as a man who once defied governments and beat champions, but as a symbol of quiet strength and unwavering dignity. In his later years, the world finally saw the full picture of the man, not just the brash young fighter, but the thoughtful elder statesman. He was honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, awarded honorary degrees, and celebrated by people across all faiths, races, and nationalities. His influence reached far beyond boxing. Athletes like LeBron James, Serena Williams, and Colin Kaepernick cite him as a source of courage. Activists and leaders name him as a guiding light. Muhammad Ali didn't just live history, he reshaped it, redefining what it means to be a champion. From the streets of Louisville to the rings of the world, and finally to the hearts of billions, Muhammad Ali taught us lessons far greater than boxing. He taught us that greatness isn't just about winning, it's about standing firm when the world tells you to sit down. He showed us that belief in yourself can move mountains, even when others call you foolish or arrogant. He taught us that faith, whether in God, in justice, or in oneself, can guide a person through the darkest storms. Ali was a master of the body, but more importantly, he was a master of the soul. He was flawed, complex, loud, and sometimes controversial. But he was also brave, loving, generous, and deeply human. He taught us that true power is not found in how hard you hit, but in how you carry yourself when life hits back. He sacrificed fame, money, and glory for principle. He endured mockery, punishment, and illness with grace. He taught us that silence can be stronger than shouting. And perhaps most importantly, he reminded the world that a black man could be unapologetically proud, intelligent, and free in a world that often told him otherwise. His journey wasn't perfect, it was real. And that's why it matters. Ali's story is a mirror to our own struggles, reminding us that greatness is not a destination but a path walked with courage. Muhammad Ali passed away on June 3, 2016, at the age of 74. The world paused to remember him, not just as a boxer, but as a man who stood tall long after the ring went silent. His funeral was broadcast globally and attended by presidents, kings, celebrities, religious leaders, and millions of ordinary people. He was eulogized not just in mosques and churches, but in the hearts of people from every walk of life. They remembered the man who danced under lights and made poetry out of punches. They remembered the man who gave up his title for his faith, who sat with the poor and the sick, and who used his fame not for ego, but for purpose. In his final years, as his body failed him, Ali's eyes still sparkled with that fire that made him so beloved. His legacy lives on in every fighter who dares to stand for something bigger than themselves, in every child who learns to believe, in every person who finds courage in the face of doubt. Muhammad Ali was not perfect, but he was real, and in being real, he became timeless. He was more than a champion. He was a movement, a voice, a living poem. He was, and will always be, the greatest.